Hi Killer Queen players, Tony here with my next KQ Tech video. This one is about the arcade cabinet itself and maintaining it in peak operating performance. For most of you, your establishment probably takes care of this. I happen to maintain the cabinet in my office, so this video is for me to share what I've learned doing that with those of you who are curious or have a private cab to take care of also. The first step is opening it up. There's a locked door on the back of both sides. Please don't open a cabinet that you're not authorized to open. You need to open this door up first, then reach in to under the front side of the cab. Not all cabinets are exactly the same, but yours probably has hooks like these to hold the play surface in place. Reach in and undo both of these hooks. After that, the play surface should slide forward. Pull straight out as far as you can, push back just a bit, then you should be able to lever it upwards. Make sure nothing's been left on the surface before you lift it. Once it's up, you'll have access to most of the buttons and joysticks. This part sticks out horizontally a bit past the front of the main cab, so there's a piece you need to get out of the way. This bit also varies among cabinets, but here there's 2 screws to undo, then it hinges up. Because it's probably the most common fault to repair, I'll show you the switches for the buttons right here and now. Each button housing has a separate switch element that snaps in. There's a short arm and a long arm. Grab the body of the switch and twist it to pull the switch away from the long arm, then pull the whole thing away from the housing. It should pivot on the short arm. Once you've pivoted far enough, the switch comes right out. Here's some more detail on the parts. The button, as I said, is made up of the separate housing, the plastic part that you normally touch, and switch inside the cab. The black plastic ring screws it into place. The threaded section is long enough to comfortably fit through a 3/4 inch thick piece of wood. The button housing is 3 parts: the outer housing, the plunger, and the spring. Even with no switch in place, the spring pushes the plunger back up when you release it. The housing lets the plunger go only exactly as far down as it needs to. You can't actually put any significant force on the switch. The housing parts can be disassembled rather easily. It might be helpful to do this after a spill, to clean up any sticky mess inside. Lastly, look again at the switch, in place. Some switches have 3 terminals like this one, and some only have 2. We'll always use the bottom common terminal, and, if there's 3, the one marked NO for normally opened. It doesn't matter which wire goes to which, just don't pull the wires if you can avoid it. The other important part is the joystick. There's 4 angled slots in the top metal plate here. You'll need to remove 4 screws from these locations to replace the joystick. You'll also need to remove the ball top, which screws on. It's best to put a screwdriver in the slot at the bottom of the metal shaft to hold it in place while turning the ball top with your other hand, before unscrewing the joystick from the cab. Take note of the shaft length. It also is designed to be long enough to fit comfortably past a 3/4 inch wood cabinet when screwed in from below, and remain accessible and playable above that. The joysticks use 4 of the same style switches as the buttons, so there's more wires. The Queen uses all 4 switches, so 8 wires, while the other positions use just 2 switches. Either way, it's a really good idea to label all the wires before you unplug any, so you know where to put them back. Each pair of wires going to one switch can go to either connection, but you need to keep the pairs of wires going to the right switches. If you need to buy replacements, there's lots of suppliers to choose from, and lots of models that you could choose to buy from each. Which should you get? Joysticks first. I'm going to suggest you stick with the zipppyy brand sticks that your cab probably came with. They're under $10 a piece and don't need replacing all that often. This brand is most likely to work well with an American wooden style cabinet like Killer Queen. Almost all other joysticks I could find are either designed for Japanese style sheet metal cabinets or have other undesirable properties like bat tops instead of ball tops. Just make sure that you buy the long shaft version, not the short shaft version which is also sometimes available, and that you get the kind that comes with quick connect style connections. I believe all zippies have this style of connection, but if you explore other brands, you might run into trouble here. Button switches are really where you get a lot of choices, and they really matter. Here's a picture of several different switches insides, from Javen Ivy of Portland via Slack. They're very different inside. The cheap switches cut corners here on the inside, and for all the tapping KQ players do, we really need top-notch switches. That said, I've bought junk switches that didn't work brand new, I've seen okay switches that worked for a while, and I've seen good switches that seem really solid. These are my favorite switches so far. Omron is a good name brand for electronics components like these, and I got them from a reputable electronics distributor, DigiKey. Because they're real electronics components, they even come with datasheets. So I know that these particular switches have a 25 gram force for activation. This is on top of the spring in the button housing, and it's the lightest activation force switch I could find. For some tap styles, this really matters. The datasheet also gives us reliability numbers. Let's take the 10 million number, which may seem like a lot, but do the math. If a button is being tapped 10 times per second, 10 million taps only works out to 11 days worth of playtime. Say a month or two for a semi-active cabinet. I've checked several similar switches datasheets. They all have similar numbers. Those cheap buttons from the arcade part sellers are probably rated even lower. This is only a rough estimate, but it's enough to be sure. Your buttons will wear out and need replacing. Good thing you know how to do it now. Keep buzzing, and I'll see you next time.